Good morning. Not going to be any scripture reading today. I'm going to talk about Nick Reiner. Before I talk about this, you need to know a little history of me so you will understand that what I'm saying comes with some authority, some personal first-hand experience. Let's go way back, elementary school age. Even at my youngest, I never felt a part of. I always felt separate from. I didn't understand at that time that, truth be told, no matter how we behave, no matter how we present ourselves, all of us, at some level or another, have this feeling of not being a part of. Well, late 5th grade, early 6th grade, in Queens, New York, Bayside, Queens, where we were at the time, my best friend stole a joint from his older brother, and he had snatched a bit of the vodka his parents had, put it in a Tupperware container. And me and him sat on the stairs at my dad's church outside that went down to where the boiler room was. Now again, this is in Bayside, Queens, New York City. And we tried the vodka. I didn't like that. We smoked the joint. I loved that. For the first time in my young life, I felt a peace. I felt a calmness. Little did I know what that was going to lead to. I spent, until I was 21 years old, trying to chase that first euphoric high. You know, when it comes to addiction of anything, and I'm not even sure there's any studies or scientific evidence of this, but it is generally accepted within recovery that at whatever age you first slipped into addiction, that's the age you are emotionally. You just stop maturing. So you're talking to a 12-year-old. And as you go in life, as you age, less and less of being a 12-year-old is accepted by society. Things get harder on you. Life gets worse for you. You're always trying to fill an emptiness within you. By the time I had joined the Army at 17, I was fully immersed in addiction. I was in my teenage years, if you've ever seen Fast Times at Ridgemont High, you're talking to Spicoli. Now, I continued to smoke my pot in the Army, but massively reduced for obvious reasons. This is the Army of the 1980s, the Army of Excellence. And it frowned heavily on use of mind-altering substances except alcohol. So I did a lot more drinking, even though I didn't like alcohol. I just had to be high from anything. I managed to get through that service, got out. And so I was in from 1980 through 85, got out, and just took a massive header off the deep end. If it would get me high or it could kill me, didn't care. I was going to use it. Finally, that reality that I was living kind of terminated one evening in my mother's basement. By that point, I was using massive amounts of cocaine, and I wasn't, quote, wasting it by snorting it up my nose. I used everything that we had back then. We didn't have, well, we had meth. We didn't call it meth. It was speed, basically. Um, Crack is just free based cocaine, pre free based cocaine. So, what I was doing though was I would mix the Coke with a little bit of water in a spoon, take a Bic lighter, and boil that water, trying to cook the impurities out of it. You don't want to get all the water out, just a little. And then I would take a cigarette filter, if that's what I had, or a little cotton ball, and I would put it in there, and then I put the needle in the cotton, whatever cotton it is, and then I would pull the liquid up into the needle, and into the arm it went. Yeah, you can see what I'm wearing now. But through that life, I would use anybody for anything they could provide me. I would steal. I would lie. You were nothing more than an object for my gratification of some sort. I often tell the story of how I wanted to get high when I was in the service. I didn't have any money. I talked a guy into pawning his stereo so I could buy a bag of weed. We did so. And I promised him, and I don't take pride in this, but I did get the stereo out of hock the first payday that we got. All that poor guy got out of it was he got to smoke weed with me a little bit, not all of it. I used him. I used women. I used anybody to fulfill my need. That is the life of an addict. That night that I was sitting down my mom's basement, I missed when I tried to inject that needle, and I drew that liquid back out mixed with blood. Tried again, missed. Drew it out again, more blood. Put it back in, and this time I got it in the vein. Of course, it's cocaine, 15 minutes and it's gone. The high's gone. You got to do more. But I remember sitting in that basement after that high had dissipated. And I said, either put a gun to your head and end this or get help. I was too cowardly to put a gun to my head, even though I had been committing suicide slowly through all of my years of drug use. I was a horribly, horribly miserable person. I was in a living nightmare. Since I was too cowardly to kill myself outright, I made use of my VA benefits. I got my butt into treatment. I would say the treatment stuck. This was 40 years ago now, 41 years ago, almost 42. But I had hit that bottom that night in my mom's basement. And that was it. It was done. It was over. Then the hard part came. I had to grow up. That's why people relapse. Imagine being a 20-something-year-old person and emotionally you're a 12-year-old. And you're trying to live in a world that sees you as an adult, treats you as an adult, expects you to be an adult. It ain't easy, guys. Slowly, I came to realize that, yeah, there is a physical issue. Um, you can say that, but the real issue for me, I will speak, is self-will run riot, an unwillingness to grow, and an unable to understand that disconnect that you felt with the world is, it may be in you a little more pronounced, but it is something that all humans experience. You're not different. You're not broken. But you have to be a responsible, productive member of society. By the end of my first year clean, I had met a woman. I knew, by the way, she didn't, but I did. The very first date we went on, all that time, I'm still struggling with what I call those tapes in your head that tell you you're worthless, that tell you you're a failure, that tell you no one is interested in you because a gnat has more value than you. That marriage, by the way, lasted from 1989. We met in 86, got married in 89. In 2010, it was over. Now, in every marriage, there is a 50-50 on the failure of the marriage. I don't care what her 50 is. It doesn't matter to me. It's not important. All that is important to me was my 50. And a lot of those struggles that I was suffering had a whole lot to do with my 50%. Towards the end of that marriage, I finally decided to listen to what I always knew I was to do, and that was to be a minister, to tell the story. Godspell, gospel, God's story. And I had decided shortly before my marriage ended to do so. Finally answer the call, answer the draft, quit dodging it. After that happened, I suddenly had an epiphany. I was basically, my old man was a minister. I was basically a John or Charles Wesley. I kind of went into it. Yes, I was called, I was drafted, but I finally went into it because the old man did it. I know how to do it. I grew up watching it. I knew exactly how to do it. But it was after I had become a minister that I had that epiphany. That, as John Wesley referred to it, my heart was strangely warmed. As Charles Wesley described it, it was just a glorious awakening. And I was much more like Charles. He wrote a hymn, And Can It Be? And can it be that I have an interest in my Savior's blood? Knowing all about me, I realized that I was the beneficiary of the grace of God, the grace and love of God, despite everything I had done, despite the blackness of my heart. Because of that, God loved me. So now you know about me. So now I'm going to talk to you about the tragedy that happened to Rob Reiner, his wife, his family, and his son Nicholas. I am Nick. There, but for the grace of God, go I. As much as, full disclosure, I despise Rob's politics. We are polar opposites. That has nothing to do with anything. I understand Rob and his wife and their dealings with their son Nick because I too am a parent of two beautiful daughters. And I would literally walk through or into fire for them. I mean, real fire. I would burn to death for them. I also understand that what Nick needed was tough love, which is on its face cruel. I often describe it as pulling every possible rug you can out from underneath the addict, because that addict is not going to change until they have hit their bottom, and we don't know when that is. And I also understand that some addicts die, never change. I know for me, the unknown was scarier than the known, my drugs. It takes a lot for human beings to step in the unknown. You're basically hanging over a cliff by a tree branch growing out of the cliff. You can't even see the bottom. You just see clouds far below. And a voice tells you, let go. That is the change. That is the trust that the addict has to experience when they let go. It has to be so terribly, ungodly, horrible that falling into the abyss is better than what it is now. It's got to be that bad. So, tough love is basically encouraging that bad, cutting off their support system that enables them to continue to use. I'm a parent. I just said I'll literally walk into a wall of fire and burn to death for my children. So, the point of this talk or sermon is A, understand Nicholas. He is now met his end. We always say that addiction ends jails, institution, or death. He has met his end in two ways: institution, jail, and he is living a death. I know him. He will destroy himself over the knowledge of what he did. He is living death. And I have empathy and sympathy for him. And I, because I was given grace, will give him grace. And I will pray for him, not condemn him. I will condemn what he did, but I will not condemn him. And as far as Rob Reiner and his wife, I will not blame them. They're a parent. They did walk into the fire for their child. And I'm here to tell you, no parent will ever, that I know of, who loves their child is capable of ruthlessly and perfectly practicing tough love, even though they know that that is what their child needs. It's too painful. My daughters get perturbed with me because, you know what, guys? In raising both those girls, my favorite time was from about 2 to 5 years old, because I saw the lights turning on in their head, the fascination and wonder of the world. And I protected my kids from the world as best I could. I wanted them to be children in wonder as long as humanly possible, because I know the world and I know what's in store for them. Well, when I look at my daughters, I see those young little girls. One is 35, one is 30. One, the 35-year-old, has 2 kids. I will never see them, ever, as anything different than my babies. If you're a parent, you know what I'm talking about. If you're not a parent, you have no knowledge of what Rob and his wife experienced with their child. You just don't. You cannot understand being a parent until you are a parent. Whether that be naturally or through adoption, you can't understand. Have grace for their family. Have grace for Rob Reiner and his wife and the mistakes they may have made. They were made in love. Have grace for Nick, who never found redemption. Within himself. Pray for him, because even Nick still has hope for redemption, still has the grace of his Lord. Sorry to start the new year out this way, but it had to be said. I've seen too much, especially in social media, of people who are either judgmental, which tells me, judgmental people, you're hiding something. I know. I am you. You heard my history. That wasn't, guys, that wasn't even the half of it. Judgmental people are hiding something from themselves, not from the world, from themselves. Pray for the grace of God to lift that judgment from you, to learn to accept yourself. For the non-parents, you just can't understand. Yeah, they made mistakes. Ask my kids how many mistakes I've made. Please stop with the judgment. If you're a Christian, your God doesn't like it. If you're Jewish, your God doesn't like it. If you're Muslim, your God doesn't like it. Doesn't matter what religion you may be, your God doesn't like it. Have a blessed week.